Alright, the DB60 control valve instruction manual MU21. MU21, IP185 revision 3, March 2013, DB60 control valve instruction manual MU21. New York air brake. Then show the plant, sales offices, and service center. Alright, 1. Documentation reference, general compliance, installation, maintenance, technical data. 3. Design features, general, DB30, DB30L, pipe bracket. DB10, service portion, DB20, emergency portion, performance features, DB30, DB30L, pipe bracket. DB10, service portion, DB20, DB20L, emergency portion. And those were the performance features. 5. The operation, DB60, DB60L, control valves. DB60, DB60 control valve subcomponents. Plate 1, charging lap position 2. Plate 2, preliminary quick service. Plate 3, surface application. Plate 4, accelerated application. Plate 5, surface lap position. Plate 6, release surface application. Plate 7, surface accelerated retarded recharge. Plate 8, emergency application first plate. Plate 9, emergency application final stage. Plate 10, release from emergency plate. Plate 11, manual release after application. Plate 12, manual release after emergency. Plate 13. 6. List of diagrammatic views, color guide to diagrammatic views, and then figures over here on the right. So there's 14 figures. Alright, 1. Documentation for this manual will cover the descriptive design function for the DB60, DB60L control valve, the AR standard S4016 instruction manual, AB test rack code of the test DB60 control valve portions. AR standard 4015 instructional maintenance, shop maintenance, DB60 control valve portion. AR standard S4014 instruction manual, repair track maintenance, freight car equipment, DB60 control valve. 2. General features complying with the DB60, DB60L flat control valve main components of the freight car brake and equipment. The figure 2 of the DB60, DB60L control valves are both approved by the AR. Meet corresponding specification manual standard recommended practices, in particular with specification number 2518, freight car brake equipment installation specification standard S400, performance specification single capacity freight brakes and standard S461, specification approval of freight car air brake control valve interchange service to SB462, performance test procedure freight brakes single car test rack and individual valve portions S standard S466. Specification conducting environmental tests on freight brake control valves, standard S476, 467. Performance test procedure freight brakes on 150 car test rack, standard S464. Specification freight brake control valve pipe bracket S468. Alright, and then we're going to turn this view to the side. Alright, shows the steel type combined auxiliary emergency reservoir, 3/4 inch reserve emergency and reserve pipes to the combined emergency auxiliary emergency reservoir. DB60 control valve, the combined dirt collector cutout cock, 1 inch branch, 1/4 inch by 1/4, 1 1/4 inch by 1 1/4 inch by 1. Pipe T branch AR standard air brake hose, 1/4 inch, 1 1/4 inch brake pipe hose, ball type angle cock, and then your 3/4 inch brake cylinder spun steel brake cylinder. Alright, over here show the DB, the outline of view of the DB60 control valve. You have your emergency exhaust on the left, and then it shows the flanging auxiliary reservoir, flanging emergency reservoir, ANSI B101, hole, threaded holes, a flange exhaust, a flange dirt collector, and a flange brake cylinder in view direction A. Then over here you have minimum installation space, release lever for the DB60 control valve, emergency exhaust flame, auxiliary reservoir, emergency reservoir, your threaded hole units, flame exhaust, flange dirt collector, flange brake cylinder, view direction A, installation space, and then release lever. Alright, 2-2 installation. The DB60 and the DB60L with the control valve made with the corner for the installation draw figure for the 3 and 4 with the complying with the AR specification number 2518 standard 7 S400. DB60 control valve with the interchange is complete unit with the proportion base of the control valve presented and approved by the AR. DB60L with the interchange long with cars completing the unit with the portion base of the long car pipe with the racket presently approved by the AR. No particular installation clearance is required with the DB60, DB60L with the control valve portion of the width of those required with the other and currently approved control valve portion of the proper port and identification shown in figure 5 and 6. Maintenance 2-3. DB6060L control valve requires no special maintenance during cleaning intervals. Alright, port A1 is a brake pipe pressure. 1A is a brake pipe pressure vent valve. Port 2 is an emergency reservoir. Port 3, brake cylinder pressure. Port 3A, brake cylinder pressure in-shot valve. 4 being a quick action chamber, and 5 an auxiliary reservoir. 5 would be the auxiliary reservoir pressure. 6 over its exhaust retainer. Emergency portion stud hole, stud hole, stud hole. 5 would be 5 and 6 are your 5 and 6 are auxiliary reservoir, exhaust retainer. Auxiliary reservoir, exhaust retainer. Number 2 would be brake pipe vent valve, stud hole. 1 brake pipe vent, brake pipe pressure 3A. Brake pipe pressure in-shot, service portion face, emergency portion face. Stud throw hole 1A, 1 brake pipe pressure 1A, brake pipe vent valve. 2 emergency reservoir, 3 brake pipe cylinder pressure 3A, brake cylinder pressure. Stud thread, quick action chamber to pressure, auxiliary reservoir, exhaust retainer, service portion face, emergency portion face. Alright, 2-4, technical data, operating pressure. The DB60 with the control valve operates the same brake pipe pressure with the commonly used with the AR interchange with the weight with the DB30 pipe bracket with the DB and service portion, including release port valve, is 62.4 pounds. The DB20 emergency portion 53 pounds. DB20 emergency portion 53 pounds. 3. Design feature for the DB60. The DB60 control valve. The design modern, simple, durable. The DB60 control valve consists of the following: DB10 service portion, DB20 emergency portion, DB30 pipe bracket, DB60 control valve figure consists of the following: DB10 service portion, DB20L emergency portion, DB30L pipe bracket. Portions can easily apply with the removal of the pipe bracket since the 5/8 inch standard hex nut to be used the fastening of the portion of the only open accessible with the socket wrenches with power tools. All function of the control valve of the portion performed in the manner with the permit of the interchange with the portion per proportion base of all of the control valve presented with the approved by the AR. The DB30L pipe bracket was one with the several other than accommodated with the DB20L with the emergency portion preventing applying with the DB20 emergency. The modern design is reflected with exclusive utilization soft seated pop valve textile reinforced diaphragms, rubber seating with the range of the control flow with the compressed air with the one unique feature for the DB60 DB60L control valve is the use of K rings in larger diameter piston with the design with the exclusively with the KNORR development featuring low friction, easily installation, automatic wear composition. Thus be designed with the DB60 DB60L control valves are free of any leakage. New York Air Brake KNORR's background experience with a similar equipment ensures the positive sealing with all corresponding parts. Test code the DB60 and the 60L with control valve thereof the design allow leakage. The design advantage for the apparent with the percent process of the repeatable test with the actual performance less AB rack. Testing time as leakage test section is short and simplified. AB racking test and procedure will allow positive and clear discussion of the test results. Energy saving with no air with the wasted through the design deficiency. So for the DB60 control valve does not utilize side spool valve components of the verifying friction conditions operating reliable and consistent over the long service periods. Simplicity of the design reflective of the easy assembly, disassemble the valve portion easily. Maintenance of the valve. Only one side section of 3/8 inch is used for the control valve covered instead included with the release valve. All the bolts are openly accessible with a 9/16 inch socket wrench applied to power tools. Corresponding part of the free mix between the likely portion needed to be not paired. Only elastometer parts or such accessory parts such as filters must be replaced during the overhaul. No gauging parts is required, thus no special training personnel are required to perform maintenance of the valve except for the testing, durability, design, and characteristics of the the rigid gray cast iron body covers of the valve featuring mechanical chemical strength, superior corrosion resistance. All springs are made of stainless steel with eliminated corrosion problem. Stainless steel and brass interior parts will not suffer further corrosion due to not require lubrication during the extended service period. Soft-seated pop valves feature low compression resulting in limited control permanent set. No small vital chokes. Our protective filter elements provide long, reliable performance. Alright, here it shows you the DB20 emergency portion, the DB30 pipe bracket, and the DB10 service portion. And that's your DBD control valve, DB60 control valve. The DB6011 control valve show the DB20L emergency bracket, the DB30 pipe L 30L pipe bracket, and 10B service portion. So your 10B service portion is the same, but your emergency portion and pipe bracket are given the L standard. The 31 DBL, DB30, DB30L pipe bracket. The pipe bracket contains the high capacity related paper to drain with the filter bracket into air. The combined dirt collector cut out before the airflow with the control valve portions. Wire type strainer auxiliary reservoir, emergency reservoir protect with the control valve portion against the dirt form materials from the combined reservoir associated piping. 31 DB10 service portion, figures 10, 11, and 12. Position number shown with the figure 10, 11, and 12. You give the nomenclature section 5 operation of the DB60 control valve service portion consists of the service portion basic valve figure 10 and 11, attached release valve figure 12. So right here is the wire strainer and pleated paper seat strainer, and that's in your DB30, DB30L pipe bracket. You have your C18 retaining check valve, quick service limiting valve, main piston stem, basic housing, basic housing, main stem, piston stem, subassembly cover, emergency recharge checking valve, and the balance check valve. And that's the service portion, basic valve assembly valve, quick service valve C51, service auxiliary release valve, the emergency release AR red valve stability choke, and the subassembly cover, the emergency charging valve, the AR charging valve, service portion, basic valve assembly. Top cover, the AR exhaust valve, the ER emergency air reservoir exhaust valve, the emergency reservoir exhaust valve. Top cover, housing assembly, bottom cover, release valve assembly view. DB20 emergency portion note position numbers shown in figure 13, 14 are even the nomenclature section 5 operating. DB60 control valve, spill over check valve obsolete. Main stem current system emergency accelerator release valve. And then front cover main housing assembly. DB20L and L classing on both front side cover assembly accelerator application valve. Side cover pulsating diaphragm cavity emergency release valve. That's your emergency portion assembly view. Pipe bracket flange face side piston subassembly emergency release check valve. High pressure vent valve in shot valve, and that's your emergency portion assembly view. For performance, 1 DB30 and DB30L pipe bracket. The pipe bracket support for the line with the bolt service emergency portion supply with the value or components of the pre-controlled flow of the air to the brake pipe of the brake cylinder combined with the auxiliary emergency reservoir retaining valve. It's also directed with the pipe bracket with which all is contained with the made with the butt socket with the welded flange fittings of the DB30L with the pipe bracket have been studded longer than other than accommodated with the DB20L of the emergency portion, thus preventing applying with the DB20 proportion. Emergency portion 4.2 of the DB10 service portion, the specific function of the service portion, supply air with the compliance reservoir during the initial charging system, recharging following a release for the application. To direct with the auxiliary reservoir into the brake cylinder, depending on the predetermined rate of the bound with the brake pipe pressure reduction. Alright. To exhaust brake cylinder during a release after the application guarantees stability with the brake system and relief of the condition against undesired application of the brakes may result with a permissible brake system or leakage guarantees stability of the brake system and service the application against the undesired release brake may result with a permissible auxiliary reservoir leak. 2. Support with the recharge of the brake system during the release of the service application reading by feeding emergency reservoir air into the brake pipe independent of the main piston stem. 3. Guaranteed minimum reduction during initial brake pipe reduction. Maintain minimum brake cylinder pressure by connecting quick service chamber to the brake cylinder pressures. 4. Support initial brake pipe production, venting pipe of the atmosphere during the preliminary quick service stage. 5. Support recharge of the braking system after manual release. Subsequent emergency application connecting the pressure auxiliary reservoir of the brake pipe. B. To permit exhaust retain with the held brake cylinder pressure of the retaining pipe with the volumes during manual releasing subsequent service reduction. 6. To direct the relief of the brake cylinder release pressure and independent of the main piston system after any application manual activation of the release handle. B. To provide main drain means of the auxiliary reservoir with emergency reservoir pressure. C. With the relief of the main piston system application with the manual activation release handle. In order to perform these functions for the service portion, equipment the following components: C plate 1, service the maintenance piston stem, service the main piston compared with the brake pipe with the auxiliary reservoir brakes acting with the equal area for the auxiliary reservoir charging, emergency reservoir charging. Balancing valves are spaced uniform at 120 degrees intervals around the same diameter around the mechanically operated bottom side with the piston, coaxially arranged with the balancing piston pressure auxiliary reservoir with the balancing valve with acting with the balancing spring, the stabilizer with the main piston, stabilizer system surface flat position, main piston operated with a quick surface inlet valve with the valve with the brake air pipe to flow with a quick surface chamber, the auxiliary reservoir brake cylinder inlet and the brake cylinder retaining outlet valve with all mechanically operated with the main piston. Stability with the main piston release position is main sensitivity, stability choke, stability with the surface flat position provided with the main means of stability choke, separate emergency reservoir charging check valve choke. Arrangement prevents uncontrolled return flow with emergency reservoir with the air auxiliary reservoir releasing the brakes for the surface application for the no undesired reapplication of the brakes will occur during the release. Surface accelerated release valve, metals reinforced with the rubber diaphragm will also compare with the brake pipe with auxiliary reservoir pressure acting on equal area of the component operates independently over the surface main piston stem. Surface accelerated release valve triggered emergency reservoir air path with the high sensitive back flow check valve into the brake pipe. Quick surfacing limiting valve with a quick surfacing limiting valve metal reinforced rubber diaphragm measured pressured by brake cylinder air with the valve with the restricted flow of the brake with the quick surfacing air to the brake of the cylinder predetermined value with quick surface limiting check with the value prevents returning flow brake cylinder air to the atmosphere during emergency application and the vent retaining being set with a high pressure retaining position. Surface main piston system in release position. Emergency release auxiliary reservoir reduction valve. The emergency release auxiliary reservoir reduction valve metal reinforced rubber diaphragm is pressurized by brake pipe brake cylinder air on opposite sides after manual release of the brake cylinder and pressure. Subsequent to emergency application, increase the brake pipe pressure during recharge operates the valve, allows auxiliary reservoir air to flow with the emergency release auxiliary reservoir reduction check valve, and the brake pipe assists during brake pipe recharging. The retaining check valve with the mean with the choke allow for the reduction of the retaining holding of the brake cylinder at the brake and pressure level which allow for the brake cylinder piston to move with the release of the front position. Alright, quick service valve 5. The quick service valve position and pressure with the auxiliary reservoir one side of the control of the quick service of the atmosphere assumed with the service of the main piston system allow with the balancing valve the pressure with the large opposite air with the quick service valve position auxiliary reservoir with the venting quick through the brake air pipe will be interrupted release valve. Release valve piston is pressurized on both sides of the brake cylinder air seal with the connection for the brake cylinder atmosphere with the upon activation with the release valve handle with the upper side of the piston vented with the release of the exhaust valve. They allow the piston to open the passage of the brake cylinder atmosphere with the piston remains in position until the brake cylinder lock up with the pressure below the piston is relieved by the surface main piston system until upon its release auxiliary reservoir exhaust and emergency reservoir exhaust valves are mechanically operated by release valve lifter allow high capacity flow auxiliary reservoir emergency reserve air to the atmosphere in order to drain the brake system. Alright, 4.3, the DB20 and DB20L emergency portion of the pamphlet apply with both the DB20 and DB20L emergency portion operation while there are suitable differences between the two portions to affect the strength of the surface of the brake and pipe eventing. Function both portions operate with the same man with a small chamber that over the side of the cover. Specific function of the emergency portion are the stabilize of the brake system again for the emergency application during surface application control of the brake with production with a quick action pressure. Support the recharge of the braking during relief of the emergency application of the connecting auxiliary brake cylinder with the pressure of the brake pipe depending on the predetermined rate with the amount of the brake pipe pressure. To increase the rate with the brake pipe production during the surface application venting a predetermined amount of the brake pipe into the air atmosphere. At the time, two-stage brake cylinder pressure buildup during the emergency application. 5A, to rapidly vent brake pipe to the atmosphere during the emergency application, connecting the brake pipe directly to the atmosphere. V, with a separate vent port, which remains until until the quick action pressure blows down ceased. B, to increase the brake cylinder pressure during the emergency application by connecting the emergency reservoir to the brake cylinder until the quick action pressure blows down has ceased. C, to protect the brake system against pressure release after the emergency application of the means of the quick action pressure blowdown choke time set to reset the feature of the brake system after the emergency application. In order to perform these functions, the emergency portion is equipped with the following subcomponents. C plate 1, emergency plate piston system 7. Emergency piston component compares brake pipe with the quick action pressure action equal areas. Piston is designed to mechanically operate quick action pressurized discharging valve in order to stabilize the system against the emergency application during the service application. Although a lost motion arrangement is provided with the piston travel the independent operated accelerated application sensor valve located on the upper side of the piston. 2, emergency accelerated release valve. The emergency accelerated release valve, metal reinforced sub rubber diaphragm is pressure over the brake pipe with the quick action pressure for the opposite side of the independently with the emergency main piston system and allow the brake cylinder to auxiliary reservoir air to assist the brake pipe pressure build up during recharging following an emergency application. Emergency accelerated release check with the valve to return the flow of the brake air pipe to the brake cylinder during the initial charging of the system. Your accelerated valve, valve 9, the metal reinforced rubber diaphragm of the brake pipe discharging valve, the pulsating valve pressurized on side by quick action air supply by the accelerated application sensor choke provides stability main margin value, permanently bleeding quick action to the atmosphere. Quick action pressure build up of the brake pipe discharging valve. Open the valve seat with a predetermined value to allow the brake pipe to flow with the pulsating valve further in the atmosphere. Your in-shot valve. The in-shot valve piston is pressurized by brake cylinder air on both sides of the during service application. Upon emergency application, the piston switches to the left-hand stop. The restricted brake cylinder flow position 2 times the two-stage pressure buildup. 5, the high-pressure vent valve. The vent valve position different with the area of the compares quick action chamber to pressure for the quick action pressure controlled by the emergency main stop system. The emergency application of the emergency main piston system creates a pressure differential between quick action chamber air controlled quick action air to allow vent valve to open against the spring force. Mechanically coupled high pressure valve switch open the emergency reservoir brake cylinder pressure. Increase the final brake cylinder, quick action pressure blowdown, choke prohibit the premature charging brake pipe holding vent valve in the open position for a predetermined time. Alright, 5, operation of the DB60 and DB60L control valve. The DB60, DB60L control valve subcomponents. Plate 1, DB6060L control valve should be unpressurized condition subcomponent design numbered with the reference throughout the instruction manual. F2 charging plate, charging lamp position. Plate 2, compressed air with the brake with the pipe load with the pipe bracket. V with the combined dirt collector with the cutout cock. One flow path leads through the pipe bracket strain into the emergency portion of the supply with the filtered air over the flow path with the pipe as the pipe bracket strain leads to the vent valve emergency portion to allow unrestricted venting of the brake pipe air during the emergency application during charge brake air pipe pressure of the following valve components. Surface portion, piston surface the main piston system, brake pipe air pressure main piston 1.46 valve C area V13 valve with the surface accelerated release valve 2 with the emergency release auxiliary reserve reduction valve 4 auxiliary reservoirs charged directly with the surface main piston system from the brake pipe airflow choke 216 and the open valve V18 to the volume of below main piston 1.46 pressurized on the upper side balance piston 1.59 auxiliary reservoir air further follow the ARBC inlet valve 138 1 to surface accelerated release valve 2 the release valve 6 to the valve seat V19 balancing valve quick surface valve 5 auxiliary reservoir V with the pipe bracket with additional auxiliary reservoir charging accomplished for the airflow visibility stability choke C13 and during charging pressure differential created by choke C16 and C13 cross main pistons exceed with the predetermined value main piston 146 move the retarded charge position C plate 8 return with the charge of lap position when the broke pipe auxiliary reservoir pressure approaches equalization emergency reservoirs charged with auxiliary reservoir air V for the opening valve seat V16 the auxiliary reservoir air volume below the main piston 146 follows V with the open valve V15 the emergency reservoir check valve 162 surface accelerated release valve 2 with the release valve 6 to the emergency portion V with the pipe bracket into the emergency reservoir surface portion surface accelerated release valve. On the left side of the diaphragm, 283 is pressure right of the brake pipe. Air of the right side of the auxiliary reservoir. Air is emergency reservoir. Air flows with the closed valve. C V2.2 valve back to valve check valve 2.89. Surface portion emergency release auxiliary reservoir left side of the diaphragm 474 reservoir of the brake pipe air and diaphragm 4 thereby force onto the right hand stop against force spring 4.90 simultaneously emergency release auxiliary reservoir reduction check valve force on valve seat 4 V141 by combined forces spring 491 and brake pipe pressure. Surface portion quick. Surface valve, auxiliary reservoir air of the volume, main piston 146, pressure out of the upper air of the piston 5104, piston thereby forced downward, open valve seats V51 against force of spring V5108, surface portion release valve, auxiliary reservoir air pressure, auxiliary release reservoir exhaust valve 6321, emergency reservoir air pressure, emergency reservoir exhaust valve 632, emergency portion main system 7, brake pipe air pressure main piston 734 with the upper side of the valve 724 with accelerated application of the sensor valve 728 on lower side brake pipe also valve with the emergency accelerated release valve 8 with the accelerated piston application 9 valve seat V7 3 close the spring force action quick action pressure discharging valve 710 quick action chamber charging C71 allows flow of the air quick action volume below the main piston 734 quick action chamber the pipe bracket with the emergency accelerated release valve 8 with the high pressure vent valve 11 accelerated application sensor valve 728 seal with the corresponding valve seat with a quick action pressure for the N8 of the spring 729 emergency position portion emergency accelerated release valve diaphragm 840 is pressure over the brake pipe on the left side with the left of the air to flow the seat with the emergency accelerated relief check valve 874 with the pressure differential brake pipe quick action diaphragm 840 becoming smaller spring 839 force of the diaphragm on its seat emergency position accelerated application valve 9 brake pipe pressure for the diaphragm air with the valve seat V91 after charge of the volume of the brake pipe discharge valve through the C91 however the diameter C9 940 seat valve seats on V91 permanently to the spring force 9.51 emergency portion high pressure vent valve brake pipe air pressure in the vent with the position 1172 on the right side of the assisting spring 1161 sealing on the valve seat 11.1 quick action pressure both side of the vent valve piston 1172 in different area with the springs 1161 1163 and 1184 balance with the highest force of the high pressure valve 1110 on the valve mean seam of the valve guide 1157 the valve stem 1156 the less of the emergency reservoir air is isolated from the brake cylinder over the airflow path air for the fully charged brake pipe quick action auxiliary reservoir emergency reservoir pressures are equalized on the desired brake pipe level all subcomponent valves have assumed stable charging lap position and have reached equilibrium forces. Alright, 5.3 preliminary quick service plates. The application breaks the initiative of the brake pipe production minimum predetermined the following service quick of the preliminary quick service itself, service portion, service main piston, quick service valve. During this brake pipe reduction, C16 and C13 prevent auxiliary reserve pressure reduction at the same rate with the brake pipe pressure, the pressure difference building. Upon the cross main piston 146, move the piston upward, open to the quick service of the inlet valve seat V13 with the valve primarily defined with the spring 143 brake pipe airflows. Quick service chamber valve restricted cross section between the upper end of the stem of the main stem piston 146 free flow with the valve seat V13. Further on the atmosphere of the V on the valve with the V51 and choke C51 over the quick service valve with the increase of the pressure differential accelerator upward movement over the service main piston system. After the main piston 146 have lifted quick service the inlet valve with the 1382 with the quick service position pressure move of the surface of the main piston for the 141 upward in the relation. The spring guide 144 so the passage of the brake cylinder retain V with the valve seat V12 closed valve seat V11 still closed at the time of the charging connection for the brake pipe auxiliary reservoir V with the valve seat V18 auxiliary reservoir emergency reservoir V with the valve seat V16 closed. Following the valve seat with the V110 closely valve seat V19 balancing valves on pressurized balance piston 159 piston 150 quick serve the valve auxiliary reservoir air piston 159 moves upward against spring guide 167 introducing force and serve the main piston stem. Your service portion quick serve with the limiting valve 3, air with the quick serve with the chamber flow with the choke 3-1, opens with the quick serve with the limiting check valve 3-12-2, passes across with the opening valve 3-1 and V valve 3-2 for the left hand side with the diaphragm 374 on the brake cylinder. Emergency portion, emergency main piston system reduction on the brake pipe pressure cover the main piston 734 unbalanced, assume with the quick action pressure cannot fail. The brake pipe pressure reduction with the same V with the choke C71 with the quick action pressure moves upward. Move the main piston in 734 upward, open with the valve C with the V71 with accelerator application, silencer valve 728, me with the valve stem 724, quick action airflow with the choke valve, choke 73 with the accelerator valve application valve 9 through the further restriction atmosphere, the maximum rate with a quick action pressure reduction, therefore limited additional pressure reduction necessary to obtain stability with the emergency main piston system, valve C7 V73 with a quick action pressure discharging valve 710 opens after piston 7344 has moved past the last move motion travel 713 after spring 715 engages and stop. The quick action pressure discharge valve 710 is opened by the 7 spring 78 such a way the difference of the brake pipe and the quick action pressure does not suppress the predetermined level of the quick action air path set the atmosphere through the open valve of the V72 and V73 through choke C72. Emergency application power portion accelerated application valve 9. As far as subsequent operation, accelerated application valve center concerning to refer to the plate 5 accelerated application. Alright, serve with the application of the control movement, the preliminary quick serve with the position once for the initial, quickly serve the activated with the sheath, serve with the position, serve with the main piston system, they utilize using pressurization auxiliary reservoir air piston 5014, quick serve with the valve move upward, allowing check valve 532 with the valve seat with the 501, under this 4 spring of the 5108, thus quick serve with the chamber is isolated with the atmosphere but remains connected to the brake pipe V with the valve C with the V133 with the main piston 146, the quick serve with the inlet valve 1382, and the spring guide 144 move with the further upward with the quick serve with the inlet valve 1382 with the ply with the force serve with the main piston 141, results lifted auxiliary reservoir, brakes on inlet valve 1381 with the force spring with the 137 on the serve with the main seating with the stem 141, the valve seat with the V11. Opens the flow path with auxiliary reservoir to the brake cylinder with the brake cylinder airflow to the quick serve with the limiting valve with the air with the valve CV1, emergency release auxiliary reservoir reduction valve 4, through release valve 6 to the right side with the emergency release auxiliary reservoir reduction valve 4, and the retaining check valve 432. Further, the emergency portion of the V with the pipe of the bracket of the brake cylinder with the valve stem 1.50 balances valve with the maintain 146 with the 4 spring with 153 to the stop the balancing position. Piston 159, move the upper side, stop over the under the auxiliary reservoir pressure. Surface portion quick serve with the limiting valve, brake cylinder, air pressure with the left side with the diaphragm 374, move the against the 4 spring of the 376. To the right, assume with the brake cylinder pressure of the breech with the predetermined valve with the 374 rest against the spring with the guide with the 375. This result of the closing valve C with the V32 and check valve 312-1 by 4 spring with 379 and flow between the quick serve with the chamber of the brake cylinder and quick serve with the limiting check valve 312-2 with the close of the valve C 3 valve 3-1 spring 4 379 and prevailing pressure. Certain portion emergency reserve release auxiliary reservoir reduction valve, brake cylinder pressure axle on the right hand side of the diaphragm 474 with the emergency release auxiliary reservoir reduction valve with the which with the move toward the left under the assistant 4 spring with the 490 again with the prevailing brake pipe pressure force with the emergency release auxiliary reserve reduction check valve 438 further with the valve seat 4 V41 valve spring guide 486 service portion release valve brake cylinder air into the release valve flow with the V with the choke C63 bottom side with the position piston 617 V with the choke C62 open valve V63 upper side with the valve 617 valve seat V62 is closed with the patch for the brake with the cylinder air over the valve with the seat V61 is open. Emergency portion, emergency main piston system. During service application, the emergency main piston system remains in stabilization position with the preventing quick action pressure as described in plate 3. Emergency portion of the emergency accelerated release valve 8 with the brake cylinder pressure pass with the service portion 3 up with the brake pipe with the open in-shot valve with the emergency accelerated release check valve 874 which remains closed position recover the spring force and pressure axis on the left side. Emergency portion in-shot valve 10 and high pressure vent valve 11. Brake cylinder pressure from the service portion path through the brake bracket the high pressure vent valve airflows V with the back Vent valve seat Viva 112, 11-2, and choke valve 10-2 with the left hand side with the in-shot valve piston. Alright, 1078, spring 1079, keep the piston in the neutral position, brake cylinder airflow through the angular section on, open in-shot with the valve with the right hand side with the piston, 1078, Viva the choke 10-1, and through the pipe bracket to the brake cylinder. Accelerated application piston plate 5. Emergency portion, emergency pain piston system 7 during the brake pipe pressure for the production cannot be performed. Same quick reaction pressure Viva the choke C71. Pressure differential builds up at main piston 7344. Opens and accelerated application sensor for the valve 728. Establishes a flow path. Reduces the quick differential, quick connection, quick action pressure at the atmosphere Viva valve V71 and choke C73, C92, and C93 for the increase of the pressure differential curve of the piston 734 with the provide sufficient quick action air activated accelerated application valve 9 described in the following sequence. For the reduction quick action pressure may be required during service the application of the main piston 734 to move further upward with the opening of the quick action pressure discharging valve 710 as described in plate and preliminary quick service at stage 1 quick action air passes choke C73 with the inner left hand brake head discharge valve diaphragm 940 to the valve C with the V92 with the pulsating the valve diaphragm 942 simultaneously quick action air vent atmosphere through the choke C92 and 93 the valve C of the air V91 brake pipe discharge valve 940 already present ensures brake pipe air pressure through the choke 9-1 initial stage of even the springs 951 and 949 keep the valves closed within stage 2 suitable sizing choke for the C73 and C92 with the pressure increase with the angular left hand side with the diaphragm 940 valve C with the valve 92 diaphragm 942 brake pipe discharging valve diaphragm 940 is open again for the forward spring with the 951 with the assistant brake pipe pressure acting with the valve C air with the V91 sudden pressurization with the total left hand diaphragm air with the high pressure brake pipe quick action mix pressure shift with the diaphragm 940 snaps again with the right hand stop the valve with the flow of the air through the brake pipe V with the choke not C91 following with the pulsating valve with the diaphragm 942. Stage 3 makes airflow cannot be divided with enough of the atmosphere of E with the choke C9 through and C93 to prevent pressure buildup with the valve with the seat in the area of the V92. Subsequent, the diaphragm 942 pulsating valve is moved against with the force of the spring. The 949 snaps safely to the right hand of the stop with the mixed pressure acting and relaxing the total diaphragm air with the pipe bracket. The quick action airflow through the choke of the C93 atmosphere valve C 9-1 for the brake pipe of discharge remains unopened during the stage. Stage 4 sizing choke C73, C91, C92, C93. Stretch of the valve V91 and V92 do not remain open permanently. Reduction of mixed pressure allowed with the diaphragm with C940 brake pipe discharging valve closed C valve C V91 for the main spring with the 951. Subsequent brake pipe volume is recharged through choke 91. Stage 4, further reduction of the pressure action with the diaphragm 942 with the pulsating valve enabled the spring with the 949 with the clove of the valve C with the V92. In the meantime, pressure on the brake pipe volume has been fully re-established in V the choke C91 as quick action pressure action with diaphragm 940 has been risen at required level. The brake pipe discharging valve switches and cycle described above starts the new process repeated until the accelerated application sent with the V valve. The 728 no longer provides sufficient quick action air to operate with the accelerated application valve 9. 5-6 service lap position, plate 6 service position, service portion, service the main piston system. During service brakes, the application of the brake cylinder is recharged. The service brake cylinder application. The brake cylinder is charged from the auxiliary reservoir by the service main piston system. As soon as the auxiliary reservoir pressure is reduced to approximately the valve brake pipe pressure, service main piston system move the service position to the service lap position here with the valve seat V11 is closed, then the flow of the path between the auxiliary reservoir brake cylinder is interrupted. Balance piston 159 act with the balancing spring 169 through the spring guide 167. Thus introduce divine force into the service of the main piston system, which holds the service in lap position. Brake pipe auxiliary reservoir are connected through the very same small stability choke C13 with the determined release stability. During the further brake pipe reduction, the service main piston system will be again moved to the service position and flow path from flow path with auxiliary reservoir brake cylinder will be open subsequent. The same procedure described above will take place and move the servo the main piston system back in them servo the lap position reduction of the brake pipe pressure of the hand. So the increase of the brake cylinder pressure can be continued with auxiliary reservoir pressure is equal to the brake cylinder pressure. Further, the reduction of the brake pipe pressure does not affect the level of the brake cylinder pressure during a servo application, but the move of the main piston system to the servo position. Service portion quick service limiting valve. The quick service limiting valve is to redetermine the minimum brake cylinder pressure. Should be brake cylinder pressure drop below the value of, for example, the brake cylinder leakage, the quick service limiting valve will open and feed the brake pipe pressure for the quick service chamber to brake cylinder for to plate 3. Emergency portion system of the main piston system 7. After production of the quick action pressure brake pipe Viva choke C7-1. Atmosphere view of the accelerator with the application sensor valve 728 with the quick action pressure of the discharge valve 710 of the balance force of the re-establishing the main piston 734 and all neutral valve in the neutral position. 5/7 release surface application plate 7. The release brake of the pipe has been increased by a predetermined margin above the level of the auxiliary reservoir pressure of the individual control valve with the complete release for the sequence of shown plate 7 and 8 in their description. Service portion, service main piston system, increase the brake pipe pressure with the produce the pressure difference for the main piston 146 with the pneumatic force against any of the mechanical force of the balancing spring 169. A predetermined pressure differential of the main piston 146 measure. Move it downward to the construct of the valve stem 150. The balancing valve with the surface of the main piston stem 141. Remain in the surface lap position over the quick action surface pressure with the visual spring guide 144. Quick surface inlet valve with 138. 2 with the following the main stem 146 with the spring force 143. The valve out seat. V1-2 with the barrette outlet valve still closed during the release stage of the further downward movement of the main piston. 146 closed valve seat V19, open the valve seat V110 through the valve 150. Auxiliary reservoir under balancing 159 under the piston 5104 with a quick service valve 5 start the vent atmosphere Viva choke C17. Main piston 146 moves further into release position corresponding with emergency pressure production. Arm balancing piston 159. Emergency portion emergency main piston system. The prevailing brake pipe pressure and push of the main piston 734 downward against the stop of the quick action chamber for the recharge from the brake pipe Viva the GQ. QA chamber charging choke C71 to the brake pipe pressure level. Alright, 5-8 surface accelerated release retarded recharge. During release of the surface application for the surface accelerated release valve is activated for the connect for the emergency reservoir to the brake pipe shift the release impulse of the locally amplified and then pass rapidly through the train. Surface portion, surface main piston system, quick surface valve. During the further downward travel over the surface main piston system, the following functions are performed. Connection between the brake cylinder with the retainer is open. The center of the low lost motion between the spring guide with the 144 surface main piston stem 141 has been exceeded by the further travel of the surface main piston system with the release position. Brake cylinder pressure is vented through the open valve CV12 with the V with the release choke with the C18 with the atmosphere subsequent to charging connection with the brake pipe auxiliary reservoir with the auxiliary reservoir with the emergency reservoir open with the valve stem 195.1 and 195.2. The emergency auxiliary reservoir pressure can only equalize V with the choke C15 with the preventing an undesired brake application called the fast and with auxiliary reservoir pressure under main piston 146. But after balancing piston 159 has moved downward to its top, the flow path of the brake pipe quick with the surface chamber with it safely closed. Quick surface inlet valve 138.2 and with two of the valves 1.3. As soon as the auxiliary reservoir air under pressure piston 5104 has been vented with the atmosphere of the Viva the choke C17, quick service valve piston 5014 opens the flow path of the quick service chamber air atmosphere Viva the valve CV51 and choke C51. As long as the pressure differential break between the brake pipe and the auxiliary reservoir across the main piston 146 exceed with the force of the balancing spring 169 with the charging and the balancing valve spring with the surface of the main piston system is locked to lower stop of the retarding charging position. For this allow for the valve stem 195.1 to C sealing ring 1100 charging the auxiliary reservoir with the now perform V the choke C16 C14 when server that pressure is differential drop the service main piston moves back to the charging lap position C plate 2 with the only choke C16 determines the further charging time. Our surface portion, surface accelerator release valve with the pressure difference between the brake pipe and the auxiliary reservoir across the diaphragm 283 overcome with the force of the ring 287 with the auxiliary emergency reservoir pressure for the valve CV22. Lift the check valve 238 with the establishing flow path with the emergency pressure reserve brake pipe V with the back flow chain. Check valve 2 valve 289 valve seat 21 the diaphragm 283, move with the right hand, stop the game with the 4 spring with 287. Flow path remains open until the brake pipe and emergency reservoir pressure has been nearly equalized with the backflow check. Valve 289, close the valve C with the valve 21. Then the brake pressure difference between the brake pipe and the auxiliary reservoir was reduced, and diaphragm 283 moves back to the neutral position, close with the valve C V22. The 4 spring with 287, the emergency portion system, the main piston system. So the difference between the brake pipe quick action pressure and the cross of the main piston 734. You can see the balance of the spring action, forcing action for the emergency main piston system. The main piston remains with the lowermost position. The quick action chamber is in charge throughout the quick action chamber, charging choke C71. When pressure differential is reduced, the main piston 734 moves back to the neutral position C plate 2. Alright, 5-9, your emergency application first stage plate 9, service position portion, service position system, service main piston system, operated with the emergency application for the general described in plate 3 and 4. However, the deviating above the main piston 142 with the force again for the upper stop with the auxiliary reservoir pressure for the brake cover, the brake pipe pressure is completely van with a stable choke with the C13 is closed by ceiling ring 199 auxiliary reservoir, brake pipe are separated with the constant connection between auxiliary reservoir and brake cylinder pressure remains open V with the valve C V11. Emergency portion of main system piston system. Rapid brake pipe pressure reduction distributed balance of the force at main piston 734 with the such that cannot be reestablished with the vent of the quick action chamber air to the atmosphere. Difference between the brake pipe with the quick action pressure with the cowl with the choke with the C71, C72, and C73 leads to emergency application during the result of the upward movement of the main piston 734. Consolidated application sends for the 72A open first after the passing of the lowest lost motion travel of the piston stem 713, the valve C7 V73 with the quick action pressure for the discharge valve 710 opens to have with a quick action pressure for the reduction rate through stroke 72 insufficient to remain main piston 734 move upward to its uppermost position valve C72 go thereby separating quick action pressure within the quick action chamber volumes under the main piston 734 with left hand side with the piston 1172 with smaller volume quick action pressure between valve seat V72 with the right hand side with the vent valve position 1172 volume with the rapidly van with the atmosphere through the choke C72 emergency portion high pressure vent valve with the resulting sole pressurization piston 1172 quick action pressure on the left hand side with the move of the piston 1172 quickly to the right hand stop it again for the force spring 1161 pressurized valve seat air with valve VL111 valve seat VL 11-1 opens brake pipe air flows rapidly atmosphere with a large cross section support cross section port simultaneously quick action chamber to van through the chokes C11-1 C7-1 C7-3 C92 and C93 in accelerated application valve the spring 1184 force for the high pressure valve 1110 piston stem 1156 the valve with the movement of the vent valve piston 1172 on the right the cut of the valve C with the V 11.3 to valve C 11.2 V11.2 with the clove of the air of the emergency reservoir and can operate enter brake cylinder into the reduced higher equalization pressure for the emergency auxiliary reservoir with the brake cylinder then obtained during the full serve of the application emergency portion in shot valve brake cylinder pressure for the pour reduce the serve of the portion with the auxiliary reservoir air with the emergency portion with the emergency reservoir airflow with the opening passes of the right end of the in-shot valve piston 1078 with the brake with the cylinder with the by closing the valve seat V11.2 with the high pressure valve with 11 brake cylinder pressure for the spring chamber with the left hand side with the in-shot valve piston 1078 cannot occur with the brake cylinder pressure for the right side right hand side of the piston there can move with the in-shot 1078 against the four spring of the 1079 to the left previously open passes the brake cylinder and thus reduce the gaps across the section at the right hand end of the piston stem. Alright, 510, your emergency application final stage, plate 10, emergency portion, emergency main piston system. During the final venting of the quick action chamber, the main piston 7 for 34 moves back to the neutral position, emergency portion, high pressure vent valve 11 during the final venting with the quick action chamber, the spring 1161, move the piston 1172 toward the left, which clove the valve C to the V11-1, thereby interrupt the action of the brake pipe to the atmosphere, high pressure valve of the valve 1110, seal the valve C of the valve 11.3, mean the ring force of 1163, valve guide 1157, and the valve stem 1156, interrupts airflow with emergency reservoir to the brake cylinder, both pressure of the however they are equal and equalized with the auxiliary reservoir pressure throughout through open auxiliary reservoir brake cylinder inlet valve within the strip of the main piston system 1. Emergency portion in-shot valve with the after reset of the high vent valve with the 1172 with the high pressure valve with 1110 brake cylinder pressure on both sides of the in-shot piston. 78 with the equalized V with the choke with the C102, which allows the piston to move back in the neutral position under force spring with the 1079. 511 release and emergency release from emergency plate 11 release valve not operated the emergency portion emergency accelerated release valve 8 dependent on the previous release of valve operation. 2 subcomponents control valve the shift the fast reaching with the brake pipe with emergency application. Release valve not operated emergency portion emergency accelerated release valve. They reach over the brake pipe with the subsequent emergency application of the valve with the quick action pressure of the V with the quick action chamber. Charging choke C71 with the predetermined difference between the brake pipe and the quick action pressure of the cross of the emergency main piston. 734 move with the lowermost pivot position. Diaphragm 840 emergency the accelerated relief valve move with the right hand stop with the pressure difference with the cross of the diaphragm 840 overcome. Spring force 839 opens valve with the V81 brake cylinder auxiliary reservoir air flows into the brake pipe through the opening valve of the valve seat V82 with the emergency accelerated release check valve 874. Spring 876 prevents full equalization of the auxiliary reservoir brake cylinder and the brake pipe pressure with the decrease of the difference of the brake pipe with the quick action pressure for the emergency accelerated release valve closes. Further increase the brake pipe pressure for the activated the strip of the accelerated release valve with the service portion and the switch connect with the emergency reservoir with the brake pipe with the low emergency reservoir with the air with the brake pipe pass over the support with the reach over the brake with the system subsequent to emergency application for the brake cylinder with the pressure control valve with the portion of the brake cylinder air with the release of the atmosphere once the surface of the main piston system 1 has moved to the release position. See plate 8. Release valve operated surface portion emergency release auxiliary reservoir reduction valve. Subsequent emergency application for the brake cylinder pressure for the venom with the activation of the release valve 6 for the described with the under the plate 13 manual release after emergency application. During recharge of the brake pipe, following functional sequences establish brake pipe air pressure left with the side of the diaphragm 474 while the right side connected with the atmosphere through the open valve seat with the V62. Release valve with the predetermined the brake pipe pressure with the force of the spring with the 490 compensated with the diaphragm with the 474 forced action right hand stop. Emergency release auxiliary reservoir reduction check valve 438 with lift of the valve seat V41 by auxiliary reservoir pressure. Through the connection auxiliary reservoir brake pipe pressure equalizers only the small pressure differential caused by spring 491 is maintained. Further increase the brake pipe pressure also activates serve the accelerated release valve 2 and serve the position which connect with the emergency reservoir with the brake pipe with the flow of the emergency reservoir air with the brake pipe also support with the recharge of the brake system. Subsequent to emergency application, they increase the brake pipe pressure from the bridge cover the serve the main piston system and move the release position thereby venting up the lock of the pressure acting on the lower side of the piston 617 with the release valve 6 spring 620 move piston 617 with the lowermost position thus reestablishing the connection brake cylinder V with the valve seat V61 close with the valve seat V62. Alright, manual release after strip of the application plate 12, strip of the portion release valve. The after strip of the application, the strip of the main piston system has been stabilized. Strip of the lap position described in plate 6, short pull of the release valve with the handle 6-1 full extent with the against of the 4 spring 6-6. We'll step with the following functional sequence release valve with the lifter 6-9 with the exhaust valve 7, 627, 1, 610, and 627 2 with are moved upward. Auxiliary reservoir exhaust at 632, 1 opens auxiliary reservoir air vented with the atmosphere through the valve seat V65, which cover the surface main piston system to move with the re-release position, which will allow us to trigger the surface accelerated release valve to the release exhaust valve 612. Lift off sub seat V64, subsequently valve seat V63, close the brake cylinder air pressure for the upper side of the position of 617, vented for the atmosphere V with the open valve VC, the V64 with the choke C61, piston 617 moves upward, assume with the pressure difference across the position, overcome with the force of the spring 620, valve seat 62 with the open valve seat 61 is closed, the brake cylinder pressure is rapidly vented. Emergency reservoir air exhaust 632-2 opens the emergency reservoir air vented the atmosphere through valve seat V66. When the release valve handle 61 release valve the auxiliary emergency reservoir air through the exhaust valve 632-1 632-2 terminated release valve stem 610 returns to its Neutral position relief. The exhaust valve opens valve C with the V63, but closes the valve V64. Here within the upper side with the V617 agent against connected with the brake cylinder line with the main piston stem has already moved to the release position. Lower side with the C617 connected the atmosphere with the cup of the piston 617 with a move downward with the A of the spring 620 with airbag opening the valve 6V 61 closing the valve C62. 513 manual emergency release emergency application plate set 13 serve the portion release valve after the emergency application for the serve of the main piston 1 and stabilized with the emergency piston addition C plate 10 short pull with the release valve with the handle 6-1 full extend with against the floor spring 6-6 will establish the same functional sequence described under plate 12 manual release after serve of the application with a following exemption on the release of the auxiliary air through the auxiliary reservoir exhaust valve 632-1 cannot cause service main piston system to relieve the position, therefore locking up pressure beneath the piston 617 keeps an uppermost position, thereby venting all the brake cylinder air to the atmosphere. Lock position of the 617 can only be released by initiating regular release of the emergency of the description plate 11 the release valve operated. B. Continuous venting auxiliary reservoir air venting V with the opening valve of the CV65 with auxiliary reservoir exhaust valve C632-1 permanently pulling the release valve handle 6-1 auxiliary reservoir pressure within the auxiliary surface of the main piston system to main release piston forces springs air from the lower side piston 617 valve flows through V with the choke 6-7 6-3 not opening brake cylinder release passage of the atmosphere without allowing spring 620 to move in position 617 the lowermost position. Release of the reservoir air in order to drain the auxiliary reservoir it is necessary to pull the release valve handle 6-1 far enough to the open auxiliary reservoir exhaust 632-1 in order to drain the auxiliary emergency reservoir and it's necessary to pull the handle release valve handle 6-1 through the full travel to open the auxiliary emergency reservoir exhaust valve 632-1 632-2. Alright, then it shows the listed diagrammatic views of the DB60 with the DB6 Control 1, following their plates, valve components, plate 1, DB control valve subcomponent shown unpressurized 2, charging lap position, plate 3, quick service, preliminary quick service 4, service application 5, accelerated application 6, service application 7, the plate 7, release service application 8, plate service accelerated release retarded charge, plate 9, emergency application first stage, plate 10, emergency application final stage, plate 11, release emergency accelerated release valve, accelerated emergency release valve, auxiliary reservoir, reduction valve, release valve operated, throw main release after service application, manual release of the emergency application, color guide, orange is brake pipe, yellow is auxiliary reservoir, red is emergency reservoir, pink is brake cylinder, blue is quick action. Our show the emergency pipe bracket and service portions. This is the control valve. Plate 2, plate 1, DB control valve subcomponents. Charging lap position, blue, red, yellow. Preliminary quick service. Service application. Probably going to make a sway out of this once I understand it better. Accelerated application. Service lap position. Release for the service application. Service accelerated release, retarded recharge, emergency application first stage, emergency application final stage, release from emergency, manual release of service application, manual release after emergency application, list of countries where representatives are located, and new information address, please contact New York Air Brake International Service, 748 Starbuck Avenue, Watertown, New York, 13601. Telephone number 315-786-5290-5200. New York Air Brake Company. And you can find that as the DB60 Control Valve Instruction Manual MU21.